All right, we are back with part two of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. You are tuned into episode 3. Thank you to everybody who is listening in. However, you're listening in, however, you get your podcast, we greatly appreciate it. Well, KB, the game that we did not think would end up being America's game of the week, truly, I have to say, did end up being America's game of the week. And that would be the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. Now, I don't know how good either one of these teams is actually going to end up being throughout the course of the season. But Russell Wilson, he put on a masterclass against this Cowboys defense, or lack thereof, because I've never seen somebody be able to go over the top on those DBs as many times as he was able to do so. Putting on a masterclass of 30 for 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then he had a meltdown in overtime. That backwards pass that ends up being a fumble that goes out of bounds, but they lose yardage. And then an interception that went right into the hands of Donovan Wilson, who is not a New York Giant, ladies and gentlemen. He is a Dallas Cowboy. Brandon Aubrey has to be the most talented kicker ever, or he's right up there in the conversation for it. Man, just what were some of your big takeaways from this game?
So I'll start by saying Rush can still ball. He can still throw it. He can still complete those passes. Now, it's a shame we got to put a blemish on that just because of the bad decision making in the overtime period. Had he not had some of those blunders in overtime, we're looking at Russell Wilson completely different than we did it, especially after week 1 where they struggled to get anything going on offense. Malik Neighbors went absolutely bonkers this game. And I think that, like you said, it's kind of hard really to tell where either one of these teams is going to go moving forward, especially because right now we're still trying to see, like, for example, with the Giants, we're still trying to see how will they continue to establish Malik Neighbors as being one of those top 10 receivers by getting him more touches, getting him more involved in the offense. Keeping him involved is going to keep him engaged in the games. And then when you flip it over to the Dallas Cowboys side, how much is CeeDee Lamb going to continue to evolve his game, especially after the week 1 blunders that he had. But I'm looking at both of those defenses right now, and I'm looking like, I'm not too sure, because the Cowboys secondary got absolutely torched. Like, torched. And honestly, if not for Brandon Aubrey, we're looking at the Giants as winning that game. He came through with one of the best, like, he is solidified right now as the best kicker in the world right now.
Casually kicked and made a 64-yard field goal. And the play call that they had before that was a bad play call at that point in the game, in my opinion, to try to run the football with that little amount of time on the clock. And the yardage didn't really go anywhere. But Brandon Aubrey, he comes out there on the field, just kicks that thing through, and it could have went for more than 64 yards easily.
And that just shows you the level of confidence that they have in them, that they were even going to consider running the ball in that situation because they knew they had the best kicker in the league. I still don't like the play call because, yes, it worked, but it still was a bad play call in that situation. I don't care about the results because of the fact that you have to look at it. Had he missed, and this is just hindsight, had he missed, we're not looking at this situation the same. We're looking at the lack of knowledge of the situation on the Cowboys' part that could have cost them the game, honestly. And it probably should have, to be honest. It probably should have. But I think that the Giants let that one get away. I really do. After that touchdown to Malik Neighbors to put them ahead, I really felt like they played too far back. They gave up too much underneath. They allowed the Cowboys to literally get in the field goal position, attempt that 64-yarder, and then go into overtime where the Giants were giving the game to them, but the Cowboys also were giving the game to them. Both teams had multiple possessions in the overtime period. So the fact that it took someone to win, Cowboys won, but I don't know if you feel too good after looking at the defensive performance.
I feel good about the offense if I'm Cowboys fans, because for a second straight game, Dak Prescott looked really good. CeeDee Lamb had 1 drop in this game. I don't believe those drops will continue to be a thing either. He still went for 9 catches and had a over 100 yards receiving, 112 to be exact. You talked about Malik Neighbors eating good in this game, 9 catches for 167, 2 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson ate good too, 8 catches, a $142 and a touchdown. So, yeah, we see that Russ can still spin the football. We see that they can still do good things. But the one part of that team that we thought was going to be their calling card, the defense, I don't know exactly what to make out of this 2 weeks in, because this was not a good showing for either one of these defenses. But I'm more so disappointed in what I saw from the New York Giants defensively. I don't expect necessarily to see good things from the Dallas Cowboys defensively, if I'm being honest. And as far as Trayvon Diggs and those DBs go, listen, man, Trayvon's been bouncing back from injuries for the past few seasons, and you can tell that he's just not the ball hawk that he once was.
Yeah, like you said, I was expecting that Giants defensive line to, make it more difficult on Dak. You got Brian Burns, you got guys like Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, you have those pieces that you would think that they would have more of a, impact on the game, and it just wasn't there. And I think that you're looking at it like, all right, these first 2 weeks, we haven't gotten the results that we want, not just from the line, but from the defense in general. Like, you're not going to win many games, especially in that improved division. Like, literally, everybody can play in that division now. Like, the Cowboys and the Giants are jockeying for basically last right now, because the Commanders, even though they're just coming off a loss to the Packers, they're still leaps and bounds better than both of them. And the Eagles are leaps and bounds better than all three of them. So you're looking at it like, all right, now we got to figure some things out. Like, we don't have a defensive identity at all on both sides. Both sides. So you talked about Trayvon Diggs' injury, but his injury history, but I think that they got a lot of things to figure out, like, and they have to figure it out fast, because their schedule is not going to get any easier.
Cowboys have the Chicago Bears on Sunday. I don't think that that's going to be as easy of a game as other folks are thinking. Chicago is practically playing for their season at this point. If they go 0-3 and Caleb continues to look like what he's looked like, there's going to be some trouble brewing right there. We've already, listen, Ben Johnson went to the podium already this week and called these folks out for how they're playing. So the accountability is going to be there, but I don't know if the right guys in the room to help take Chicago to that next level. I don't know if some of them are there right now in key positions. The Giants, however, you got an angry Kansas City Chiefs team that you got to take on for Sunday Night Football. And as impressed as I was with what we saw offensively, especially from Russell Wilson on Sunday, I'm not so sure we're going to see a repeat performance of that. I think Kansas City goes in and they handle business on them. But what was even more amazing to me, KB, is that the Giants had any type of performance the way they did with how this game started off. The very first drive, James Hudson III, the left tackle, the backup left tackle, a troubling first drive. 4 penalties on one drive alone on him. He had 4 penalties on one drive. That had not happened in the NFL since the year 2000. And then he had a total meltdown on the sideline after Brian Daboll made the decision to pull him. We saw the video footage when they showed it coming back from commercial break. He was jawing back and forth with Daboll. You've got the players trying to calm him down. My favorite was when Jameis Winston standing over there beside him, basically telling him, you cannot do that.
I mean, I don't get it, because you even had the commentators at the time speaking on, I'm surprised that he wasn't pulled. They thought that he was supposed to get pulled earlier, because it was continued mistake after mistake, mental mistakes over and over and over. And when you're talking about, going at your coach for literally pulling you out for something that was self-inflicted, is kind of crazy to me. I mean, you honestly were jawing with your head coach about being pulled for your own mishaps. And in a league where you're expendable, I don't think that's a good idea. That's just me, but I don't see why he just didn't see, like, there was no accountability. It seemed like he made mistakes, but he was supposed to be able to just play through it. But you're killing your team. You're killing your team at that point, and especially on the first drive of the game where you're trying to establish something, you give us 4 penalties. I'm at a loss for words because, like you said, I haven't seen that ever from one player.
And some of these were stupid penalties too. Like there was one in particular where he was trying to get by James Hudson. He slaps him in the helmet. He literally slaps him in it. Like these are stupid penalties that we're talking about here. Now there was at least one that was a false start. And as inexcusable as pre-snap penalties are, you expect there to be at least a few false start penalties on offensive linemen in NFL and even college football games for that matter. But yeah, I've never seen anything like that. Kudos to the Giants for being able to bounce back from that. But teams who need to bounce back, and that would be the Cincinnati Bengals. They're not bouncing back from a loss in the win or loss column, but they are going to have to bounce back for the next 3 months without star quarterback Joe Burrow. He was injured during Sunday's game with a grade 3 turf toe injury that requires surgery, and he is expected to be out for 3 months. The O-line is currently ranked 28th in the league. He's never had an offensive line that ranks at least top 20. KB, before you go, I just want to make this clear to our listeners. You're talking to somebody who has a disdain for the Cincinnati Bengals organization. There is a black cat running around that organization, and Joe Burrow needs to get out of there. I don't want to necessarily blame the lack of the O-line on the fact that this injury happened, but Mike Brown and that front office, they've done nothing to try to protect Joe Burrow the way he needs to be protected. Now, part of this is also on Joe Burrow, too. And I say that because he went on national TV after their season ended, and he said, we need to pay Jamar, we need to pay T, we need to pay Trey Hendrickson. So, yes, they paid your weapons, they paid your top defensive player, and they should have paid those guys. But you have to ask yourself this question. Should you have considered letting T. Higgins go if you could have traded him to get multiple draft picks to help get the pieces you need to shore up that offensive line? Because, like I said, I don't want to blame this injury on the offensive line, but this happened because Jacksonville's defense was able to swarm Joe Burrow and get to him. And like I say, he's never had a top 20 defense in the league. So this is a very unfortunate break. Not that either of us here are Cincinnati Bengals fans, but anytime the game loses one of its top players, it just sucks. And you look at the season that Joe Burrow came off of last year, where no doubt about it, if the Cincinnati Bengals are a playoff team or they win the AFC North, he wins the NFL MVP award. We're not talking about Josh Allen, and we're not talking about Josh Allen, and we're not talking about Lamar Jackson in that conversation. That was Joe Burrow's award to lose at that point if they could have made some noise and got to the postseason. And, you always hear, well, there's always next year. In this game, that's not always the case. It's a very violent sport that these men play, and this is the result of what ends up happening.
Yeah, like this is really unfortunate because this is yet another major injury for Joe Burrow that he's going to have to overcome. And in the short answer, yes, I do believe that they should have let T. Higgins walk. And it's not because of T. Higgins, but you have more pressing matters to address. You're getting destroyed back there, and you're not even going to be able to be with your team until possibly mid-December, possibly January. You're looking at missing 3 months of action, and you're in a competitive division outside of Cleveland. You still have the Steelers. You still have Pittsburgh. You have the Steelers, and you still have the Ravens. You're losing ground, and now you're hoping that Jake Browning can, hold the fort down for just long enough to, possibly just hold it down until you can get back. But it's, I look at it now, it's just like that front office has failed him. They failed him. As great as he's been since he's been in the league, they have failed to get him that necessarily help that he needs on that offensive line to protect him. Like, you can pay the star receiver. You can pay your star DN. You can pay all these people. You can even pay the quarterback. But if he's back there running for his life, He's out there getting season-ending injuries. He's getting significant injuries at that. How much longer are you willing to take a beating? Because it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And we've seen him being missing seasons now where he's had to miss significant time with these injuries. So now, Joe Burrow, where do you go from here?
I would like to go ahead and just throw a flyer out there. We don't know how much more Matthew Stafford has left in the tank. He's had a great start to this season, but he's up there in age. And let's say that he might want to call it quits after this year. He only signed a short-term extension with the Rams. It wasn't the deal that he necessarily wanted. He reluctantly signed that contract. What if he decides that after this season is enough? Because remember, he came into this season already with injury concerns about his back that has given him trouble before in the past. I would just like to throw the flyer out there. Sean McVay, you are a brilliant coach in this league. You are a top 3 guy in this league. Go get a top 3 quarterback who is still of age and is still in his prime and keep you and the Rams relevant and in the Super Bowl conversation and save him from that tire fire of an organization in Cincinnati.
I actually like that move. That will make sure that the Rams are guaranteed to be competitive for the next maybe 10 years. Because I think that one person's trash is another man's treasure. So I look at it, if you will surround the that he needs, let him go somewhere that will. And if your successor is Joe Burrow, a top 3, like you said, a top 3 quarterback, in my opinion, in this league. Oh, man. And you already still have Puka Nacua, who is a top, I'm going to say it. I know a lot of people might disagree. I'm going to say it. He may be top 5. Top 5 receiver. He may be first top 5, but he's close. He's closing in. He's reliable. He's not super athletic, but he is reliable. And Devontae Adams can still show that he has something in the tank. You got a great running back in Kyron Williams. These are things that they got an improving defense. If I'm Joe Burrow, these are all appealing things to me. And Sean McVay is the thing that brings it all together. The mastermind behind all of it. Great young head coach. You know, he can be the thing that makes Joe Burrow an NFL MVP. That's how great of a coach that Sean McVay is.
Yeah, and I just think that would be a better situation than him from what he's dealing with in Cincinnati. I mean, Jerry Jones, and rightfully so, gets a lot of flack for how he runs the Cowboys organization. Mike Brown is the default general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals. KB, he is 90 years old. What is he doing running an NFL organization in any sort of way right now? They do not want to win. They are not serious about winning. You can't convince me that they are. Somebody who is 90 years old has no business being in the front office, helping making decisions for an NFL franchise. So you just can't convince me about this. And I don't want this to end up being another Carson Palmer situation. You know, we saw a situation where Carson Palmer, he wanted certain things in Cincinnati. They didn't give it to him. He ultimately wanted to trade. They wouldn't trade him. He had threatened to retire. Remember, he didn't really start off that 2009 season, I believe it was. Maybe it was 2010. And Chad Ochocinco was being interviewed about that, and he was telling the media, no, Carson is not playing. And we saw that Carson wasn't playing. They traded him to the Raiders. That didn't end up going too well, but he ended up going to the Cardinals, resurrects the second half of his career before ultimately retiring. I don't want to see Joe Burrow waste his prime with an organization that's just not serious about winning. Thank you for signing Jamar Chase. Thank you for signing T. Higgins. Thank you for reluctantly coming to a one-year agreement with Trey Hendrickson, one of the best pass rushers in the league. But you have not done anything to protect your quarterback, who is the biggest investment in that franchise. He is the only reason that anybody viewed you anywhere close to a Super Bowl conversation. Save him from himself, Los Angeles, please. Les Snead, Sean McVay, the Cronkies, get him out of there, please. And speaking of guys who can help resurrect and save quarterbacks, Kyle Shanahan is also on that list. And we saw that for ourselves on Sunday, KB. Mac Jones, I would have to say that this was a dominant performance. And I know that it was the lowly New Orleans Saints, and we love saying the lowly New Orleans Saints these days, being from Atlanta and knowing how we feel about the Aints. Mac Jones going 26 for 39, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, the reason I say that this was an impressive, dominant performance, he did not have George Kittle. He didn't have Brandon Ayuk. He probably knew at the start of the week that he was going to be out there as the starter because we kept hearing all these rumors about Brock Purdy, if he would be out there, if he wasn't. Ultimately, by Thursday of last week, it was pretty much decided no, Purdy's not going to be out there. But Mac Jones went out there and he did his thing. Am I surprised that he did his thing? No, because he has competent play calling again. I think people forget who completely wrote him off, KB. Mac Jones in his rookie season, he had good numbers with the New England Patriots, and he took them to the playoffs, and he also was a Pro Bowler, even though he was voted in as an alternate. Do we remember who his offensive coordinator was in New England that year? That was Josh McDaniels, before he departed to go to the Raiders and become their head coach. Now, that ended up being a disaster. He's back in New England as the OC for Drake May now. We'll see how that continues to grow. But who was Mac Jones' offensive coordinator the very next year after that? That would be Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator who Bill Belichick had cosplaying as an offensive coordinator. So, of course, Mac Jones' stats went down the tank and things just went awry there with that. He never stopped being a good quarterback. And if you put him with the right talent in terms of coaching personnel, they're going to be able to get the absolute best out of him. And remember, and I'm going to toss it to you after this, Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones in that draft. He wanted to trade up and draft Mac Jones. John Lynch is the guy who we heard in those reports was hell-bent on getting Trey Lance. And I can only imagine the conversations that are happening in that building behind closed doors now. It's like, well, we finally got Mac Jones in the building, and Kyle may have known exactly what he was talking about before we even get to Brock Purdy here in this whole thing. What's your take on this?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the talent has always been there. It's more so about surrounding him by good play calling and surrounding him with some playmakers. I think Mac Jones has always been capable of this, but he has to have been in the right environment to do it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give him a lot of credit because I feel like if you are an NFL player and they have an NFL defense, it's impressive to me regardless of who the opponent is. You might just be catching an opponent that's down on their luck like the Saints are this year. But, I mean, that doesn't take away from the performance. He controlled that game from start to finish. He looked poised. He looked like someone who knew exactly what he was going out there to do. And I think that with Mac Jones, this may just be like an audition for his potential next team. You know, there's a lot of teams right now that need quarterbacks. I'm not saying no names, but some teams need quarterbacks. So, you know, it's hard to find a good starting level quarterback. And now you look at San Francisco, they have two. They have two starting level quarterbacks. Once Brock Purdy comes back from injury, you know, I'm not going to say it's a quarterback controversy or anything like that, but he has to be careful with how he plays because we know that we've seen that Mac Jones has been a starter in this league and he can do it. And with Kyle Shanahan, who's I can't really put too many names above Kyle Shanahan as far as play calling. He is a guru. You saw what he did in Atlanta. You saw what he's done since he's been in San Francisco. And pretty much everywhere he's been, he has been a guru for offenses. So I'm looking at, you know, Mac Jones as he's going to get a lot of interest from a lot of different teams.
Yeah, one of them might be that team that he played on Sunday because this quarterback class coming out for this year's upcoming NFL draft, they don't look so hot right now. So we'll end up seeing what happened with that. And yes, I agree with you that Kyle Shanahan is a guru. We just wish that he would have been making the right play calling when it really mattered in Super Bowl 51. But I won't bring that up too much, you know, because, you know, that's in the past. And The Falcons are moving forward. The NFL is moving forward, and we just wish that some things could have been a little different. Would have been nice to see a Vince Lombardi trophy coming down through Atlanta, Georgia. But we'll see if their time is going to come. Speaking of another Jones who is out there doing his thing, that would be Mr. Daniel Jones with the Indianapolis Colts, and he's with Shane Steichen, another tremendous offensive play caller, KB. I think people forget that Jalen Hurts had his best season statistically as an NFL quarterback when Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles during the 2022 season. Jalen Hurts finished top 3 in MVP voting that season, and it just hasn't been the same since Shane Steichen left. Now, yes, he went back into good quarterback form a year ago and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, but just goes to show, man, sometimes it's not always the quarterback. Sometimes these guys are a product of their environment. And we see the mess that the New York Giants have been for the better part of the last decade. No wonder Daniel Jones really couldn't succeed there. And we talked about what New England was the last couple of years of Mac Jones being there after that rookie season that he had. Sometimes you just got to be willing to give guys a chance. I think the quintessential example of this, honestly, is Baker Mayfield and what he's been able to do transcending his career and really resurrecting himself down in Tampa. Another tremendous come from behind win on Monday Night Football. That play call to go for it on 4th down deep in their own territory, that's one of the riskiest play calls I've seen. They still had all 3 timeouts. It was more than a minute remaining. I don't know if it's that they didn't trust their defense to be able to slow down C.J. Stroud or what the case may be, because he wasn't necessarily having a tremendous game himself, but he also wasn't having a bad game. But they went for it, and Baker picks up that 1st down himself, and Rachaad White runs in that touchdown. KB, I got to ask, man, now they've got some injury troubles that are starting to add up here a little bit. But if they can stay healthy for the most part, do you see a world where Tampa Bay could end up in the Super Bowl this season?
Unfortunately, I can't go that far, and I love Baker. Baker's a gamer. He's a winner. Literally everywhere he goes, and he's tough. I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender at the moment. I still look at teams like Philly, Green Bay as being just better than them overall. I look at the landscape of the NFC. Outside of those two, then it starts to trickle down until we have some contenders, but I still need to see more because you have the Falcons. I think the Falcons and Tampa Bay are in the same tier right now as teams that still have a lot left to prove, but are looking good so far early in the season. They matched up week 1. Baker found a way to lead a game-winning drive, and he came back and did the exact same thing on Monday Night Football. Now, with them, the questions are going to be, as far as their overall, defense-wise, I'm still curious to see what's going to happen, with some of the, play from the defensive line. I know they got Vita, and he's still looking good, but you still have some key injuries that just happened. So I'm looking at Tampa Bay. I just need to see more. But so far so good, but I'm not ready to put them in that Super Bowl picture because it's only a handful of teams that I would feel comfortable at this day and age right now saying that I would bet money that they're going to be there. And majority of them are coming out of the AFC right now. But as far as the NFC, you got to show respect to the champs, and you got to show respect to what these Green Bay Packers are doing. Other than that, it's a toss-up for me.
Yeah, Kalijah Kancey being one of those defenders who they lost on Monday Night Football, torn pectoral, that's going to hurt. That's a loss right there. We'll see how they're going to be able to bounce back from that. You're going to need to see more from Hassan Reddick going forward. I'm hoping that Father Time isn't knocking on his door for the sake of the Buccaneers, but they should be able to easily take care of business on Sunday. They're hosting the Jets in their home opener, and the Jets look like a hot mess in week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. I hate that for Justin Fields, and he has a concussion, and he will not be starting on Sunday. We will have Tyrod Taylor out there. So, we'll see what ends up happening there, but just two great come-from-behind wins, man. Baker, just absolutely sensational. He's a gamer. He's a baller. And if you love the game of football, I don't know how you can't root for the guy. We know that Thursday Night Football kicks things off this week, but we're not going to waste our time talking about the Dolphins and Bills organizations. Well, not the Dolphins organizations, the Buffalo Bills. They should go out there and they should steamroll them easily. But some predictions that we'll get into for this week. Let's start with the game that should be a fun one, and that would be the Rams and the Eagles in the 1 o'clock slate. KB, who you got in that one?
I'm all for revenge games. This for me is not going to be one of them. I still feel like Saquon Barkley being that X factor on the ground still makes them very hard to beat. Jalen Hurts, as much as he's been a winner, he hasn't been, consistent in the passing game, especially early on in the season. But I feel like what they can do on the ground is going to be the difference. So I got the Eagles taking this one. I'll go with a respectable score, about 24-20.
I'm going to go the same score as you, but I'm going with the Rams to win this one. And I say that because I don't know if I trust those Eagles cornerbacks the way that I trusted them a year ago. You saw that if CeeDee Lamb didn't have those drops, he had good routes that he was running out there. He was pretty open on some of those. And the Rams, they have the receiving depth that Kansas City does not have, which was a big reason I picked the Eagles to win last week. I think Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua are going to present some problems. Give me the Rams to win in Philadelphia while it's still warm this time of year, 24-20. The game we just spoke about, the Jets and the Buccaneers, I'll be covering that one on Sunday. Give me the Bucs by 2 touchdowns in that one.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. I don't like anything the Jets are doing right now. And as much as I love Justin Fields, without them, I don't think they really stand much of a chance. Tyrod Taylor is going to come into, a tough environment, and he's going to have to, try to navigate that offense down the field. I just don't see it.
Got an early fun NFC West battle happening in week 3. I don't know if we expected this to be as it is. That would be the Cardinals and the 49ers, 2 teams that come in at 2-0. It is San Francisco's home opener. I am drinking the Mac Jones Kool-Aid here, KB. Give me the 49ers to win this one. I'm going to go with a final score of 27-21.
Yeah, I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go with the 49ers as well. I didn't like what I saw that second half, especially towards the end with the Cardinals and Panthers game. I didn't like how I felt like they closed that game. Yeah, they got the win, but that to me was troubling because they couldn't put the Panthers away for whatever reason. I'm not sure. It was almost like they were trying to give that game away. So I'm going to take the score. I'm going to go 27-18. I'm going to go with the 49ers.
Got a Monday Night Football matchup that very well could be a Super Bowl preview, and that would be the Lions and the Ravens. This one is in Baltimore, and it is the Ravens home opener. I like the Ravens at home. I like what they're doing. I don't know if the Lions are going to be able to slow down Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry and company. Zay Flowers is really still coming into his own as the number 1 wide receiver. He had another good performance on Sunday. I know it was against Cleveland, but the Browns defense, they are respectable. You might not like the offense as much, but the defense is to be respected. Give me the Ravens to win that one 31-24.
Hate to do it, my brother. Gotta go opposite. I think that Detroit hit their stride, and sometimes a game like that is exactly what you need to get going. And, I'm not going to take too much away from week 1 because I feel like that was more of the improvement of the Green Bay Packers. Also, I think that, they're working through some things right now, but they still have that talent in the backfield. They still have those outside weapons on offense, and they still have a few playmakers on defense. So I'm going to look at them as they're going to keep this game as close. They're going to try to muck this game up. They're going to do everything that they can to get Baltimore out of their rhythm. And I think that this is just another tough test for Baltimore going through Cleveland's defense, week 1, going against Buffalo in Buffalo. And I think this is going to present a challenge to them because this is another high-flying offense. So give me Detroit 27-24.
And a fun SEC College Saturday matchup I want to go through. This will be the last one that we go through here. Auburn on the road at Oklahoma. Auburn ranked 22 in the nation. Oklahoma ranked 11. They're both 3-0. KB, who you liking this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Oklahoma this time. I think that the Sooner offense, the one game that I saw where they played against Michigan, that was an impressive performance. I like that the defense was flying around the field. They made Bryce Underwood uncomfortable, and I think Venables has something this year with that team. I don't know they're special, but I think that I need to see more. But I really like them in this game. I think this matchup favors them, and I really feel like that this is going to be. I'm gonna actually say that this is gonna be a shootout. I'm gonna go. I may go 34-30.
I'm going to go 34-31 in favor of Oklahoma. Like you said, Venables, he has something. You can tell that he's got his imprint all over this defense because these are the defenses that what they have at Oklahoma this year. It looks very close to what Brent Venables had for so many years at Clemson. And yeah, they're missing him right now there too. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. Appreciate you all tuning in. Also want to give a special shout out to our brother from Newton High School, Eric Reed. You guys will see on the podcast platform starting this week the new logo we have. Shout out to Eric for all the work he did on helping us put that together. We've got some more surprises coming down the pipeline for you guys. But this has been another episode of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. I'm Zay. He's KB. We're checking you later. Peace.
Peace.